Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today, we'll be diving into the Southern Baptist Convention, the fact that they are being investigated by the Department of Justice. So, the FBI and other like minded agencies are investigating the Southern Baptist Convention. This is pretty interesting news. It comes just after the FBI conducted a raid on Trump's residence, and it comes at a time when the IRS is getting a football stadium full of new agents. So the federal government is making some power moves, and this investigation could be seen in light in context of these moves by the Department of Justice. It also could be seen as further implosion of the Southern Baptist Convention. So there's a lot to discuss with these events. But first, why are they being investigated? And that question does not really have a clear answer. In fact, the answer is so not clear that the Southern Baptist Convention is very insistent on why they are being investigated. But here's the thing. They don't have a track record of putting out honest statements about intra-convention scandals or allegations. So with that said, let's just look at their statement that they currently put out. Don't forget to like the video. Also subscribe to the channel. That is the least you can do to help out the Evangelical Dark Web. Most you can do is evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. You can support this ministry for as little as $5 a month. So this is from the Baptist Press, but it shows it's an article that I wrote, but this is the block quote that they did in their statement. The SBC Executive Committee recently became aware that the Department of Justice has initiated an investigation into the Southern Baptist Convention, and that the investigation will include multiple SBC entities. Individually and collectively, each SBC entity is resolved to fully and completely cooperate with the investigation while we continue to grieve and lament past mistakes related to sex abuse. Current leaders across the SBC have demonstrated a firm conviction to address those issues of the past and are implementing measures to ensure that they are never repeated in the future. The fact that the SBC Executive Committee recently completed a fully transparent, that's a joke, right, investigation is evidence of this commitment. We recognize our reform efforts are not finished. In fact, those efforts are continuing this very moment as the recently announced Abuse Reform Implementation Task Force begins its work. By the way, I did an entire video on the ARITF. I did an entire video on that, breaking down the 9 members on that. Todd Benkirk is not the shadiest character on that list. They got a lot of liberals running that task force because, Tom Askell might have said that Bart Barber's not a liberal, but he sure is appointing a lot of liberals, which makes him a functional liberal, like Al Mohler. Nonetheless, our commitment to cooperate with the Department of Justice is born from our demonstrated commitment to transparency, that's a joke, address the scourge of sexual abuse. While so many things in this world are uncertain, we can be certain that we serve a mighty God. Nothing, including this investigation, takes him by surprise. We take comfort in that and humbly ask you to be in prayer in these days and weeks ahead. Specifically, we ask God to grant wisdom and discernment to each person dealing with the investigation. So let's do a run through of the people that have signed this statement. We got Danny Akin, president of Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, the wokest seminary of the Southern Baptist Convention. Jason Allen, Midwestern. Bart Barber, he's the president. Paul Chitwood, International Mission Board. James Dew, president of New Orleans. D. Hance Dilbeck Jr., president of Guidestone. That's the retirement fund of the SBC. Kevin Ezell of NAM, he's the most powerful figure in the Southern Baptist Convention. Adam Greenway, president of Southwestern. I'm going to talk a little bit more about him in a second. Jeff Yorg, Gateway. Brent Leatherwood, acting president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. He is a complete liberal, very bad on the issue of abortion. Ben Mandrell, president of Lifeway. Willie D. McLaren, the woke interim president of the executive committee. Al Muller, president of Southern. And Sandra Wisdom Martin, executive director of the Women's Missionary Union. So it's important to note that the Southern Baptist Convention is the organization putting out information on this event. They are carefully putting out crafted statements as to what's going on. And it according to the Baptist Press, the DOJ did not return any comment to the Baptist Press prior to the release of this press release. So that just shows that what we know about the situation comes only from the Southern Baptist Convention. That should be a red flag if you want to know what this investigation is about. Because let's be real. The Southern Baptist Convention sprinting to dive on the grenade of sexual abuse. The fact is that the data and the Sexual Abuse Task Force report, which I read, does not substantiate the reputation that the Southern Baptist Convention is trying to paint itself with. I mean, the situation might be worse, but it's not worse based off the data that they're trying to present. Because in the grand scheme of things, the actual amount of sexual abuse that takes place in such a large denomination like the Southern Baptist Convention is actually proportionately smaller than statistical average. Obviously, smaller isn't necessarily good enough, but the point being that it's not a hive of covering up, and the report didn't even show that. In fact, the two instances that the Sexual Abuse Task Force report focused most on was Jennifer Lyle, who was not a sexual abuse victim. She was an adulterous woman. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. Not even in the same league. And then the Johnny Hunt situation, which there's no way you could get a criminal conviction based off their reporting on that situation. Based off their side of the situation, you could not even get an indictment, I don't think. And again, last week we talked about the Matt Chandler church situation and how, allegations were raised and the indictment got through, but then they dismissed it after the indictment because there wasn't actually probable cause that the event took place. So, that being said, in these cases, the two most focused on instances in the Sex Abuse Task Force report don't actually qualify to be sexual abuse. They're not actually sexual abuse. That should be very telling as to the honesty of the Southern Baptist Convention. So what do I actually think that this is about? Let's actually get into conspiracy theory mode here. And this is not just out of that bloom. This is based on the fact that I've been reporting on the Southern Baptist Convention going on 3 years. And the Southern Baptist Convention has a history of lying in public statements. They just do. We're going to do a tour down memory lane here in a second. But what I think this is actually more financial. Because if you read the Sex Abuse Task Force report, there's a lot that's not in there. Bobby Lopez and I were kind of talking on his live stream how he believes that they're actually covering up more than they're revealing. Because the only thing that they revealed that was new was the Johnny Hunt allegations. That was the only thing that was new. Everything else was old ground. They just want to tread on Paige Patterson some more. And that's tired out. I think a lot of liberals are tired out from that. But it wasn't new ground. So that should be very telling. So what are they hiding? Because this Sex Abuse Task Force report didn't actually cover any SBC entity other than the executive committee. So the North American Mission Board, exempt. The 6 seminaries, largely exempt. the International Mission Board, where it will probably be most easy to cover up sex abuse, mostly exempt. So that being said, and Johnny Hunt was a NAM staffer, by the way. So why wasn't NAM included in the report investigation? Because the investigation was a hit piece. It was going after their enemies on the executive committee. That's what it was going after. It was meant to malign people like Rod Martin, who pushed back on the Jennifer Lyall narrative. It was meant to push back on those people. It was meant to punish those people, drive them out. So that being said, I actually think this is largely financial, because if you look into the NAM books, they are basically an investment firm. It's weird and very shady how much money they have, what they spend their money on, because they're not super transparent about that either. And the fact that they have stockpiles of money, they're openly saying that they don't really need to rely on the they don't need to rely on SBC cooperative program giving. They have statements like that. It's just really shady. Additionally, the North American Mission Board and the ERLC perjured themselves in court. They perjured themselves in court. So this is a separate theory, but also kind of related, because in court, I believe it was in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's in the McRaney case, the McRaney lawsuit, and they wanted to dismiss that lawsuit. And I believe it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court granted standing for the lawsuit to proceed. So that's where that lawsuit's at. It's in the discovery phase, I believe. But they had to go to the Supreme Court just to get to the discovery phase. So among the appeal process, because Kevin Ezell is the most powerful man in the Southern Baptist Convention, he has exerted control over state-level conventions that, again, Baptist polity is that every entity is separate. They're not actually the state level and the national level are separate entities that have voluntary cooperation. And the Southern Baptist Convention perjured themselves, claiming that they were a hierarchy in the Court of Appeals. So that could be the basis for an investigation. It could be the basis for a financial investigation. It could be the basis for a sexual abuse investigation. And the fact is, when you lie about what your denominational structure is, when you lie about what the hierarchy is in the Southern Baptist Convention, you invite this. And the word RICO could be thrown around because you're an organization. In fact, the SBC is literally a conspiracy organization, because they're not a denomination. They're not really focused on missions. They're not focused on the gospel. They're focused on their own power. So let's take a trip down memory lane, because I don't think that they're being investigated over just sexual abuse or the sexual abuse that we know about. That's not why they're being investigated. They're not being investigated because Jennifer Lyall cried once. They're not being investigated because Johnny Hunt tried to have sex with another man's wife. That's not why they're being investigated. So let's take a trip down memory lane, because I think their statement's complete bait and switch. So we can go to Bobby Lopez. This is early Evangelical Dark Web days, published in 2019. So Randy Stinson said, let me be absolutely clear. No faculty member, including Dr. Lopez, has been told or would be told they cannot discuss homosexuality. And then he later goes on to say, as Southern Baptists should expect of their seminaries, we are committed to the biblical view of marriage and sexual ethics. Any claim that Southwestern Seminary has wavered on these long-standing commitments is either misinformed or intentionally deceptive. Further, Dr. Lopez's claims about what I have personally said about these matters are demonstrably false. So they fired Dr. Bobby Lopez, and I've had Dr. Bobby Lopez on. I've done multiple live streams with him. They fired him because he wrote an article under a pseudonym about homosexuality and sexual abuse, actually. So this is how the Southern Baptist Convention treats sexual abuse survivors. But he was not even a footnote in the Sexual Abuse Task Force report. He was not even a footnote. And he was fired for it. They lied. And this became evident because Bobby Lopez had recordings. He brought receipts. So he brought receipts. And let's go to the next major lie. Al Mohler pretends to declare critical race theory incompatible with Scripture. This was in November of 2020. So this was a couple months after critical race theory became a nationwide issue. It wasn't just people like me reporting on it at evangelicaldarkweb.org. It became a national issue because Donald Trump retweeted Tom Askell. I believe that was August of 2020. So this is this was late November, early December of 2020. And they say, we are thankful for the theological commitments of the Southern Baptist Convention standing against the tide of theological compromise in the face of an increasingly hostile secular culture. In light of the conversation in the Southern Baptist Convention, we stand together on historic Southern Baptist condemnations of racism in any form, and we also declare that affirmation of critical race theory, intersectionality, and any version of critical theory is incompatible with the Baptist faith and message. This is the exact opposite of Resolution 9, but again, many of these people voted for Resolution 9. And then each seminary president add their own twist to it. They had their own individual one. So we got Danny Aiken saying, we must continue to speak with clear conviction against any aspect of racism. The sure and certain cure to any form of evils is the gospel. No unbiblical ideology can solve the social issues that confront us. Every faculty member of Southeastern Seminary is fully committed to teaching the biblical truth in service to King Jesus and to standing steadfast in an increasingly secular culture. And this is a lie. I mean, John Harris has done multiple videos on Southeastern. They're the wokest seminary in the Southern Baptist Convention. Walter Strickland is certainly one of the wokest names. And we have Jason Allen. Jason Allen put out a thing, and it just wasn't super honest because right after this came out, he had his books of the year that had woke books on there, so it was just kind of embarrassing. And then Al Mohler at the end is just basically saying that this isn't taught here at Southern. It's just such a lie. Such a lie. The Southern Baptist seminaries were teaching critical race theory, probably still are teaching critical race theory, even after it became a major issue, because they can't help themselves. And I would imagine they're also teaching feminism, which also is very much derived from critical theory. So this is the latest and greatest. Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, Adam Greenway, purged another conservative professor. And this story is just quite interesting. It was a lot more interesting than it appeared. And this had to do with the fact that the Southern Baptist Convention fired a professor. They eliminated his position, then told him if he wanted to continue, he had to accept a retirement position. And then when he refused that retirement position, they said that he resigned. It's like, no, he didn't resign. You already fired him. You already removed his position. You terminated him. And then you're saying, why won't you take a retirement position? And then he put out a lengthy, and I mean lengthy, letter detailing what that retirement position included and obliged him to do, which was very undesirable. And here's a lie that I highlighted in my reporting. Dr. Allen desires to devote his best time and energy to preaching ministries outside the Southwestern Seminary, including his new preaching coach ministry. While we are grateful for Dr. Allen's ministry through Preaching Coach in order to best steward the resources of Southwestern Seminary, it was determined that it was the best and new endeavor that it was best that this new endeavor be pursued in a role that relieved them of full-time faculty and administrative obligations. And this is a lie. This was absolutely a lie, and David Allen's report just goes hard into it. And the thing about David Allen is he's no Bobby Lopez. Bobby Lopez is quite black-pilled on the Southern Baptist Convention. This guy is still blue-pilled on the Southern Baptist Convention. He just can't believe that they would eat their own like this. He can't believe that he would be mistreated. 30 years he's put into the convention, and they just treat him like this on the way out. He cannot believe it. And the employee mistreatment at Southern or Southwestern Seminary is just quite embarrassing for a Christian organization. So that's the latest and greatest. You can read about all those at Evangelical Dark Web. But I want to be clear. I don't think this is necessarily about sexual abuse, or this is not about the known quantities. They are lying. They're acting like they're doing all this work. They're doing all this work on the issue. They are doing nothing on this issue. They are covering up what they don't want to tell us. They are covering up what they don't want us to know, and then they are mistreating survivors or real survivors that don't fit with their narrative. That's what's going on. They're not serious about the issue. They're serious about power. They want to rule the Southern Baptist Convention. It's not much more complicated than that. So that's all I got to say about that. My name's Ray. This is the Evangelical Dark Web. If you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel. If you really like this kind of content, evangelicaldarkweb.org /join is where you can go to support us. Otherwise, subscribe to the newsletter, and you can get all these updates in your email, including you can get notifications for videos in a way that bypasses the YouTube censorship algorithms. So another reason to sign up for the newsletter. Have a blessed day. I will catch you on the next one.